house prices. One family about to lose their home are in studio to tell their story amid fears that thousands of homes could be repossessed in the coming months. And Taoiseach Joan Burton and Sinn Féin President Gerry Adams go head-to-head in a major political debate.
Sinn Féin is very, very focused on putting taxpayers' money into jobs and not into toxic banks.
The first and foremost thing is creating jobs.
But you predicted with certainty there'd be no cuts in child benefit if you were in government. Protect child benefit, vote Labour.
Yeah, well, I mean, isn't that what you tend to do during an election?
There's been a further slide in support for the government in 3 new opinion polls. The Labour Party has hit a new low in all of the polls.
The Taoiseach's car was blocked in for more than 2 hours.
There's an enormous amount of support for the very large investment programme into Irish water.
Sinn Féin are up 2 points to 24%, and this is the first time that party is the most supported in this poll.
Sinn Féin to the fore at today's protests. The party had faltered during the water charges campaign and was seeking to make up ground today.
When we took office as a government, the country was in the process of having shed 250,000 jobs. In fact, the total job losses went over 300,000. Already we have gained back 80,000 jobs.
Support for the government parties has increased according to an opinion poll for tomorrow's Sunday Business Post. Labour has seen an increase of 3 points to 9%. Sinn Féin is on 20%, that's down 4 points on the last tracking poll.
The head of the far-left Syriza party has been sworn in as Prime Minister. Parties on the left have hailed it as a turning point for Europe.
I heard Deputy Adams recently telling Europe to bugger off or sod off or whatever phrase he used. That's a recipe for beggaring the Irish people and the Irish economy.
And cut after cut, the Labour Party in particular has attacked the very people who they've always claimed to protect. Fine Gael's way or Labour's way. Check it out.
Well, you're very welcome to the programme this evening. Taoiseach Joan Burton and Sinn Féin President Gerry Adams are here with us tonight to debate who's best placed to represent those who are struggling financially in Ireland today. Well, it comes at a really interesting moment with the election in Greece of the anti-austerity party Syriza, who are vowing to get a write-down on Greece's huge national debt. Our poll question tonight, in association with Amoric Research, is about that very topic. Should Ireland support the new Greek government's efforts to seek debt forgiveness from Europe? Now, there's information about how the poll works on our website. Bear in mind, we're not asking you to vote. We have a panel of over 1,000 people who've already done that for us, but we'll be bringing you the result a little bit later on. Now, though, Taoiseach Joan Burton and Gerry Adams, you're both very welcome to the programme. Thank you for being with us. We're going to start this by giving you each a minute to set out your stall, if you like, and to talk to the audience at home and here in the studio. And Taoiseach, you're first, so whenever you're ready, off you go.
Thank you, Claire. The economic collapse struck fear into us all. Fear for some that we'd never get back to work, for others that our children would emigrate forever. That fear is lifting, slowly, but it's lifting. We can dare to hope again, because working together, we're building the recovery. 80,000 new jobs already, and 40,000 more this year. Those jobs mark the line between despair and dignity, between just surviving and facing a better future, between losing our sons and daughters to emigration and welcoming them back home. The recovery is real. The Labour Party will deliver a fair recovery and shared prosperity. More money for all workers as taxes go down, starting this month. The Christmas bonus restored, child benefit increased this year, next year too. We're not there yet, but we can dare to hope again.
Taoiseach, thank you very much. Taoiseach Joan Burton. Now, President of Sinn Féin, Gerry Adams, over to you.
Claire, it's Party Public Tánach Sinn Féin Tamid a Gerry poblacht nua a hogáil, bonaha ar ceo ananas. Sinn Féin is a Republican party. We believe in Irish unity and equality in a citizen-centred, rights-based society. These entitlements must include the people of rural Ireland. Citizens have the right to public services, to a job, to a home, a decent wage, the right not to emigrate, the right to a wraparound health service, a clean environment and access to education. Instead, inequality has deepened under this government. The wealthiest have benefited the most. A third of our children live in consistent poverty. Sinn Féin is a pro-enterprise party because a strong economy will serve the needs of all the people. And Sinn Féin will do what this government have not done. We will negotiate to relieve our people of the unfair debt burden. It's the bankers' debt, it's Europe's debt, it is not the Irish people's debt. Bíogí Lynn.
Gerry Adams, thank you very much. OK, what we're going to do now is hear a couple of voices from the audience and then we'll come back to you to discuss the issues raised. Matthew Whelan, I'm going to come to you first. You don't have a job, Matthew, at the moment?
No, I'm on unemployment assistance right now.
And how's that going for you and how has life been under this government?
It's like I'm in study at the moment in Digital Skills Academy and that's going quite well, and it's I'm grateful to the government that I'm actually being allowed to do that or getting to do that, so that's okay.
So you're happy with this government, and in particular because we have the Labour Party leader here tonight, you're happy with Labour?
I'm unhappy with Labour in the sense that at the last election they promised and they reneged on some of those promises, okay? But I'm unhappy at Sinn Féin as well. They seem to, they preach anti-austerity. Like in Northern Ireland recently with the new Stormont House agreement, like they're now implementing austerity in Northern Ireland. Like they kind of focus on Northern Ireland as a model for what they would do in the south, right? Forgetting that, like in Northern Ireland, they get a block grant up there from the UK government. That a lot of employment in Northern Ireland is public service jobs from Westminster. So they don't have the same focus on job creation up there or on tax collection. So in that sense, I mean,
so
I wouldn't be competent with Sinn Féin.
OK, we'll come back to those issues in just a moment. Anthony Comiskey, Anthony, where are you? Do you share the view there that you heard from Matthew? What's your view?
I have one of many negatives about the current government. The main one that affects me at frontline would be jobs and job schemes. Excuse me, very bad job schemes. The main example would be Job Bridge. It's scandalous the way it's still intact after 3 or 4 years. It's basically exploiting unemployed people. It's paying them pennies. If you want people to work, get them a real job.
OK, and your views on Sinn Féin?
If I was to vote at the moment, I would vote. At the moment, I'm not with any party in any way at all. If I was to vote at all at the moment, it would be primarily with Sinn Féin. Second of all, I'd go down the independence route. OK. Bernard Flynn from Mullingar. Where's Bernard? Bernard, would you consider yourself part of the squeezed middle that we hear so much about?
Very much so, Claire. Anybody working and a middle income currently is caught on a tax. The USC in particular is, it's a killer tax. It's going from the very basic level where you're earning, where a single person at the moment is going on to the higher tax level at 34,000. It's very small money to be raising to going into that higher level. And the cost of living seems to be going up and up, or bills seem to be going up and up, but Taoiseach has referred to more money going in our pockets, but it's certainly not meeting the level of money that's going out. So are you looking for alternatives then? Are you looking towards Sinn Féin, for example? Well, I'd be slightly worried I have looked at the budget proposal that Sinn Féin put in before the 2014 budget, and Sinn Féin were they were. I think Mr. Adams has put himself forward as a Santa Claus following in Mr. Taspiris's election today. A Santa Claus for Ireland. I'd be worried who's going to pay for Santa Claus. It's very easy to stand up and say, oh, look, I don't want that tax, I don't want the other tax. I don't want the USC, but I understand that the USC is going somewhere. It's not going into a government pocket. It's going to pay something. Okay, so where do you come up with it if you get rid of it? Precisely. OK, Byrne. And one more voice then before we come back to the Taoiseach and to Gerry Adams. Ruth Cullen. How are you, Ruth? Thanks for being with us. You're a lone parent, am I right? I am indeed, yes. OK, so tell us about your situation and your views on our parties represented here tonight. OK, hi Joan, how are you? Hi Gerry. I'm a lone parent with 3 children. I'm
I'm a carer as well. My son, Stephen, is 10 and he has specific speech and language impairment. I suppose my main issue is around childcare. As a lone parent, I'm qualified. I went to college and studied. I'm an addiction counsellor, Joan. I'd like to work full time, but my son needs specialised care within the home. I can't put him into a community creche. I suppose the biggest issue would be childcare, but I'm also a member of the National One Parent Family Network, and the draconian cuts that have happened to these women, you know, where their children turn 7, and it's just horrific.
The lone parents allowance then is reduced when your child turns 7.
When your child turns, it's abolished.
Okay, so you then go on to job seekers. You did vote Labour in the last election.
I did, and I'm so disappointed. I put my faith in, Joan, and I really thought that you were going to help women and children. And I feel, Joan, that you've gone more towards austerity, where you could have stood up for us instead. So very disappointed.
All right, well let's come back to the Taoiseach on that point. People are disappointed. They thought they were voting for one thing and they got something else.
Well, just let me say that when we made our platform before the last election, we based it on the figures of growth that had been given by the Troika and by the Department of Finance. But in fact, if people recall, in 2011, after we went into government, there was the Greek crisis followed by the whole crisis in the Eurozone. So in fact, it became much more difficult. What we
so
did
the financial situation was worse, you're saying, than you thought?
Well, if people remember, and it's hard to remember then, but it looked like the Eurozone, because of what was happening in Greece at the time, was actually going to collapse. And everything became much more difficult. But what we did focus on, and what I want to say we continue to focus on, was firstly trying to sort out the dreadful debt situation that we inherited, with the economy literally collapsing at that time. We lost in the end over 330,000 jobs, and all our big banks and our construction industry collapsed.
Joan, people like Ruth would say that you promised to protect them from Fine Gael and from austerity.
And what we did was two things. We actually maintained all of the core weekly social welfare benefits alongside a very significant increase, for instance, in the numbers of people who collected and who actually applied and got carers. For instance, I spent a lot of time meeting and talking with people who had children with special needs. We actually revamped that whole system of application. We put in new systems so that people could apply easily. And the consequence is, people will know, that the number of people, for instance, getting carers, getting special payments went up by almost 20%. So we provided for that. But more importantly, on lone parents, what we want to provide is a way back to work. And by the way, lone parents, after the child is 7, go into another 7-year transition period to get people maybe to go back to education and then ultimately back to work.
Gerry Adams.
That's what happens there.
Santa Claus here, as Bernard said.
Well, I want to pick up on a couple of the points, if I may. First of all, the British Tory party cut the grant by £1.5 billion. Despite that, in the Stormont House negotiations, Sinn Féin guaranteed that not one benefit which is under the authority of the executive will be reduced. That's fact. Secondly, my beard might be white, Cavill and Far, but I'm not Santa Claus. We have costed our proposals. What we put forward in the budget submission was a fair, decent way to reduce the deficit in a way which was not socially disadvantageous to ordinary people.
But
that's
Gerry
what we
Adams,
put forward.
it's $4 billion a year, universal social charge. You want to get rid of that. You want to get rid of water charges, property tax, all the rest. Where is it going to come from?
Well, first of all, we stood against the imposition of a second water charge in the north. It's been long party policy. It will cost $3 million to get rid of water charges here. That will, first of all, remove an unfair tax from people. It would also put money into their pockets and they will spend it. We will also get rid of the property tax, which will cost $5 million. Again, that will put money into their pockets and they will spend it.
This government didn't come up with those charges for the laugh. They need the money.
Well,
the
with
Exchequer
respect,
needs the money.
Here's what this government did. And I'm also not Pat Roberts. So
Sorry,
I'm not
these
going to
are
make
extraordinary figures, Gerry. Would you like to say, he said that the water charges would cost 3 million and the property charges would cost 5 million. Could I just say that Sinn Féin's plan on water charges would cost an extra 800 million and Sinn Féin's plan to abolish the property tax would cost 500 million. These are kind of fantasy figures on the leader's part. They're amazing figures. They're simply not correct.
We'll let Gerry respond.
And if he thinks about it, he'll know they can't be correct.
Honestly, you have to work out what the economy is for. Is the economy to pay the big bankers and the corrupt people who caused the collapse in the first place? Or is it to ensure that our people are looked after? Now, you imposed, as Minister of Social Protections, some of the cruelest cuts of all. Every one of the promises that you made, you broke. You cut child benefit, you cut a range of maternity benefits, you went through a whole, and the Taoiseach kept reminding us these were cabinet decisions. So the cabinet sat round the table and decided to cut the back-to-school clothing and footwear allowance. Imagine that. So what we would do is put money back into people's pockets and remove unfair taxes from them. And the property tax is an unfair tax, and the water charges is an unfair tax. Where did you put the money out of the taxpayers when you set up Irish Water? 78 million into the pockets of consultants.
But you know, when you get in there, the cupboards are bare. There's nothing there.
You see, the mistake that Labour made at the very, very beginning was that they rolled over. They moved seamlessly from an election campaign where they said they wouldn't do all these things into doing all of these things. And do you know who created the crops? It wasn't that Paddy went mad. It wasn't that the people partied too much. It wasn't that we had an obsession with property. 190 people controlled 62 billion of the banking debt. They're the people who caused the problem, and we should have stood up to them, and you should have stood up to our people in Europe.
All right. But Gerry Adams, isn't that what coalition is all about? And if you decide that you're going to go into government, you will most likely, with the figures the way they are at the moment, need to go into coalition, and you will need to compromise, and you may find yourself in a similar position to Labour.
Well, with respect, I can't find any evidence of any negotiation between Labour and Fine Gael. And this Taoiseach, in her capacity as a Labour leader, was involved in that negotiations team. There was no arm wrestling. There were no all-night negotiations. You were the poorest negotiators ever come out of any political party.
OK. Joan Burton, you have an awful lot to respond to there.
If he's such a great negotiator, it's amazing that he agreed easily on a total rollover to actually axe 20,000 public service jobs in the Stormont House agreement. It barely took an evening in which he did that. But obviously, that's what he was doing. Can I just say the only rolling I've done since I came into government has actually been rolling up my sleeves to get down and get people back to work. Can I say in relation to the man who talked earlier, I think it was Anthony, about Jobbridge and people going back to work. I made it my job to make sure that at any one time every year, 22,000 people go back to education and get a back to education allowance. So far, some 36,000 people on a voluntary basis have actually done Jobbridge schemes for 6 or 9 months. That's an internship scheme, and 60% of them, I'm really sorry if you didn't get a job out of it, but 60% of the people who do those work experience and back to work schemes get jobs. And going back to Ruth's question and lone parents and anyone on social welfare, the best way, the absolute best way, and I don't think that he understands that, the absolute best way out of poverty is actually to get a job. That's what it shows. And what we've done as well is we have given supports to anyone going back to work so that first of all they can go back to education, secondly they can get work experience, and thirdly they can actually finally get employment. And this year, in the budget this year, their taxes are beginning to go down. The USC, which was mentioned earlier, and secondly, income taxes and the rate at which people enter the top.
I just want to let, because Ruth's been mentioned a good bit here. Ruth, I just want to give you a chance to come in quickly, and then Gerry Adams, I'll come to you.
Can Bonnie speak, Claire? Because Bonnie's working full-time. She's a single parent and she's working full-time.
I was dependent on social welfare. The biggest challenge, I became a lone parent in 2007, and the biggest challenge to me return to work was childcare. And you haven't mentioned childcare, and nor has Gerry Adams mentioned childcare. The low-income and middle-income families cannot survive paying double rents or paying childcare on top of that, or after school. You haven't put anything coherent in 7 years together in relation to addressing childcare. No government has. And that's still, if we want to get the economy back together, we need to start looking at the issue of childcare.
Scandinavian model of childcare.
I want to agree.
And the other thing
all right, just let her respond, Bonnie.
63% of lone parents were working before the crash. So it's very disingenuous to start off saying that you need to get lone parents back to work.
Joan Burton will let you respond to that.
I want to say, first of all, I agree with you as a mother, as somebody who went out to work myself, about the absolute importance of childcare. It's something that we have to. What I said is we would improve it, and what I've done and what my department has done is to give money to the Department of Children. What I want to do is to create a second preschool year. We don't. I'll be honest. But nothing is probably. You know, we have
You're talking about getting us back to work.
And we have to build it.
You're cutting our benefits. You're cutting lone parent benefits, and then you're telling them to get back to work.
Actually, we didn't.
You have to meet
Bonnie,
the address childcare.
You need to allow her to respond. That's just to be respectful and fair here. We need to just allow her to respond.
But the best thing is to go back to work. That's the only way to get children of lone parents out of poverty.
All right.
Claire, I just want to correct a point that the Taoiseach made about the North. And the Taoiseach and others in Leinster House only mentioned the North in a futile attempt to score points of Sinn Féin.
That's your view. You think badly of everything to do with the Republic. We're actually proud of the Republic. You're not.
I want to see a real Republic.
We know that.
I want to see a real Republic. But anyway, Taoiseach, let me make my point very, very briefly. I was there during the Stormont House negotiations.
You came in at the very end, I think.
You were there for a sleepover one night.
No, we were there longer than you.
You never said a word. Let me finish. You never said a word.
We were there longer than you.
Claire,
as David Cameron told you,
Claire.
Everybody else had been talking for about 75 hours. You came in, and as is your wont, you lay down the law. The big man comes in
Claire, just
and has the football more.
Let me say this. First of all, 11 days after you left, and you and the Taoiseach come in the with the British Prime Minister, and I made the point that you were amateurish and ham-fisted. Far from laying off 20,000 public sector workers, Sinn Féin have guaranteed that the measures that you were bringing forward, which were to bring austerity into the North, that we've stood against them, that only those who voluntarily want to leave the public service, in consultation with the unions, will be expected to do so. Now, coming back to the issue...
I think that's 20,000 people.
No,
is it not?
But no, they're not being paid off.
Is it not 20,000?
They're not being paid off. No, there's no figure. There is no figure. And by the way, Taoiseach, it's your agreement. And the agreement you were going for, the agreement you were going for would have done to the North what you have done in this part of the island, that is to destroy the social protections of citizens. I want to come back to the issue of childcare. Childcare, you're right. It isn't available, it isn't accessible, and it isn't affordable. And it needs to be properly funded, and it needs to be a proper commitment from any government which would serve the people.
Aidan Boylan. Aidan, where are you sitting? Aidan, you're very welcome to the programme. Thanks for being with us. You're running a business in Balbriggan, I understand.
Right. Yeah.
What's your view on what you've heard tonight and what the future might hold, particularly if, say, Sinn Féin enter a coalition or if Gerry here becomes Taoiseach, for example?
Well, I spent last week in Germany at Bau building fair. And the German people our reputation with them has grown. They're starting to see us as a serious country again. For the last 4 or 5 years, they look at us as they looked at Greece and looked at Spain and these countries. And I think the government has done that, at least. When I hear Sinn Féin talking about burning the bondholders and doing what Greece did, we would be as far back as Greece is at the moment. Greece has made no headway whatsoever, whereas we as a country at least have progressed. As a business person, we have got to do business with these people.
Okay. And you're fearful that Sinn Féin might wreck whatever good work you see has been done so far?
Yes, and wreck our reputation again.
Gerry
and
Adams.
I would be worried about that.
Okay.
Well, worry about the 500,000 people who couldn't live here because they couldn't get a job. That's the price that's been paid. Worry about these people who are single parents who can't get childcare. Worry about small business, and you say you're a small business person. I know from my own experience, small businesses cannot get credit. Small businesses are nobbled by these upward-only rents. The government wouldn't remove any of those two issues. Sinn Féin have put forward a jobs plan which is about rural Ireland as well as urban Ireland, which is about the social economy as well as the creative arts, and it's about supporting the 70% of the people who are employed by small and medium businesses,
Gerry,
as well as foreign and inward investment.
Can I put a very serious point to you on that? And it's feedback that we have had over the last couple of days when we're putting this debate together and asking people what they think about Sinn Féin. Businesses are fearful because you talk about increasing corporation tax. You talk about increasing tax for people who are earning over 100,000. Now, there is a fear around that you might do things that are anti-business. How do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, Claire, we have never talked about increasing corporation tax. Never. Right? We have said that PAYE workers, people on minimum wages, ordinary working people, will not get any tax increases under Sinn Féin. In fact, by us introducing an end to property tax and water charges, they will get, as I said earlier, money in their pockets. Yes, we do believe that those who have the most should pay the most. So we would bring in an extra rate of tax. And what it amounts to are those people who earn over 100,000 euros paying 8 cents for every euro in addition to their 100,000. We've also said at the top of the public sector, and this, Taoiseach, includes you, you're paid 171,000 euros every year. We've said that you and others in the public sector should take a cut if you're earning over 150,000. So what we want to see is a reform of the tax system. We want to see the reliefs standardised so that the small man and the small woman can avail of it, as well as those who are wealthy who can bring in the big accountants to work it out.
All right. Well, look, we have one of those people who you would tax at the higher rate in our audience, Paddy. Paddy Malone. Now, we should say you are a Fine Gael member.
I am.
All right, just
and
to
Gerry would know me well because we're from Dundalk.
Okay, just to be clear about that.
I didn't know you earned as much as that, Paddy.
How do you feel about that, Paddy?
I look at it from the point of view of others and what happened in the 70s and the 80s. And when we go back to the 70s, and Richie Ryan's government was 77%, Gareth Fitzgerald's government was 70%. And what happened was a massive evasion. And that's one worry I would have. The second worry I have is we are at the moment moving towards a knowledge box economy in the same way that Northern Ireland has, and then the UK is probably going to move in the same direction. We need to attract FDI businesses that are going to be able to get the right calibre of people into the area.
So foreign direct
investment will
you
die.
think they'll be turned off by what Gerry Adams is saying?
If you are offering a Harvard graduate that's joining Intel tomorrow morning a job between Israel and Ireland, and you offer him the tax rates, he's going to go to Israel. And we are going to lose out significantly, not on the current generation of Intel investments, but the generation 10 years from now, because those executives would have known what Ireland was like. And it's that worry that I have. You've got to look at the long-term impact. It sounds great to increase that. The other thing was the increase of employer PRSI. Again, it's a negative impact. It stops people creating employment. Now, there are things, and I welcome it. Sinn Féin, up until 2009, was calling for a corporation tax rate of 20%. It's made clear now it's 12.5%, and I'll give them credit for at least putting that one to bed. But there are other issues, and they're very sensitive from the point of view of the IDA.
Okay.
I just so happen to know Paddy, and Paddy, like a lot of people who may be on a big wage, are as patriotic as anybody else. And they will not flee the country if they're asked to pay 8 cents in every year over 100,000.
What about multinationals, Gerry Adams? What about multinationals?
Well, you see, we welcome the involvement of multinationals, but we also have to be concerned about terms and conditions for workers. We have to be concerned about the zero contract that this government presides over. A good economy, a good, sorry, Taoiseach,
an absolute lie. Because the first thing I did,
sorry, well, I haven't got finished my point.
Time I might be let into the debate by the
Can I finish my point,
chairperson.
please?
No, can I actually contradict? Can I contradict what you said.
Labour's way.
You told a lie. And you're actually not telling the truth when you're talking there now about the Irish economy, about employment in the Irish economy, or about the tax system. And I think some of the people who have expressed a worry about what you might do have heard tonight why they might be worried. And just let me say this. The first thing I did as Minister for Social Protection was to actually increase the minimum wage, which had been cut by the previous government, by €1 an hour. The Labour Party has been the only party which has actually talked about having a low pay commission to look at all that's happening. It's going to report in a couple of months in July, and to look at having a procedure for looking at low wages in the Irish economy.
Can I ask you
your
about
allegations, like much else of what you said about other things in the Dáil, the things you've forgotten, the things that you've said that were untrue, and the things that you've actually neglected to address.
Can we ask you, though, your view on the higher tax rate for the higher earners?
Well, you see, I think that tax rates in Ireland, and the cumulative tax rate at the moment is over 50% between USC, which was mentioned earlier, and which is a big burden for a lot of people, and which we're reducing. We took 80,000 people out of the USC, and we lowered the two lower rates. I actually think that the tax burden for an awful lot of people between, say, 25,000 and 70,000 a year, whether it's one person in the family working or two people out at work, I think at 51% cumulatively, I think that's quite high. And what this government has agreed to do, and I think it's the correct focus, we will actually put more people back to work, give people more money in their pocket by actually reducing USC and reducing the top rate of tax. Now, Gerry is suggesting that just as the country comes out of a very, very difficult period in its economic history, that Sinn Féin will abolish things like, for instance, property charges, but they will impose additional higher income taxes, so they'll shift the tax burden actually onto people who work. In a recovering economy, Gerry, where we also want a lot of self-employed people to start and grow their businesses, I think your policy might sound nice, but it doesn't make great economic sense.
Go ahead.
An economy must serve the people. You reduced yourself to personal invective and personal attack. You accused me of telling lies. You promised the electorate you would not introduce water charges. You introduced water charges. You promised the electorate you would not cut carers' allowances. You cut carers' allowances. You promised the electorate you would not cut child benefit. You promised the electorate it would be Labour's way or Frankfurt's way. You didn't stand up for Irish interest in Europe anymore. Let me finish. I didn't interrupt you.
What did Sinn Féin do?
Please let me make my point.
Yes, you actually did interrupt me. What did Sinn Féin do?
Please let me make my point.
You failed to tell the truth when asked.
Please let me make my point. James Connolly said famously, judge the freedom of a society by the freedom of its lowest class. One-third of our children...
The land of Ireland is nothing to me without the people of Ireland. And I don't think you've cared that much for the people of Ireland, including children. I don't think you've cared that much.
A third of our children living in consistent poverty on your watch. Don't please sit there and make glib remarks to me. We have put forward costed estimates, costed proposals. Let me finish, Taoiseach, please let me finish. Which are about equality, which are about fairness.
You're making allegations here in relation to your
listeners cannot hear
which are not true.
The listeners cannot hear me. Section 31 was got read off a long time ago. Please let the listeners listen to what I'm trying to say and then argue against the points I am making. We put forward costed proposals which are about decency and fairness to the people of this island. Wherever in the island they live, in the Dublin inner city or in rural Ireland, they should not be scattered across the world. As I said earlier, people have a right to a job, they have the right to live here, they have the right to be protected. And what your government has done has increased inequality instead of what should be Labour's job in any government, keeping equality to the front. You haven't done that.
Can I reply to that?
Of course you can.
Because in the report produced by the CSO, just last week, it actually showed in the latest figures which we have on these issues, Claire, that for the first time in a long time, the actual income of people in the middle range has gone up. And for the first time in a very long time, let me tell him, that the actual figures in relation to poverty have gone down very, very slightly. They're not our figures. Well, I can produce the figures for you. They're in the figures from the CSO.
Okay.
They also show, and this is considered very important in America, that the median income of families in Ireland has just gone up for the first time in a long period of time by about 300 to 400 a year.
Okay.
Now, they are all significant achievements,
I want to ask you,
along with the 80,000 extra people back at work.
OK, Taoiseach, we've limited time. I want to ask you what you think about what's going on in Greece at the moment with the election of the left-wing party. They say they're going to renegotiate their national debt. Do you think that you'll be exposed if that happens? I mean, if they go to Europe and say we're not paying, will we have been sold a pup because we said we would pay?
No, because what we said we would do and what we did, and what I said when I was Labour Party spokesperson on finance before the election, was that the best way to deal with the debt was to renegotiate the debt, to push it out for 30 or 40 years, as we did with the promissory note, and to lower the rates of interest. I think it's quite... first of all, I want to wish the people in Greece, I just want to wish them every good fortune, because that country is in a dreadful, dreadful state. They've had a lot of debt relief, but so far, all that has happened is the economy there has been in a debt spiral.
But their plan, or what they tell us they're going to do, is going to put it up to Europe, and they're going to say, we want more of a deal than you're prepared to give us, or we're going to walk away.
Yeah, and their problem is, Claire, they can't borrow. Their borrowing would cost them 10% or more. We can actually now, as a country, thanks to all the efforts that everybody in the country has put in, we can now borrow very slightly above the German rate of borrowing. That's why our economy is growing.
Because
it's growing employment.
We've been good.
Yes.
We've been good European
because
citizens.
we have actually exited from some of the worst difficulties that we had by renegotiating the debt. We got lower interest rates, and we got, for instance, a promissory note which was going to cost us $3 billion a year, has been put out over a long period of time, and we can borrow at some of the cheapest rates now in the Eurozone, very slightly higher than Germany.
You would walk away, wouldn't you?
No. We're very, very clear about what we would have done and what we advocated that the government would do, and the government refused to do it. And time out of number...
What would you do now, though?
No, sorry.
We're looking ahead.
Well...
But you voted for the bank guarantee.
I know, Joan, let him
we didn't vote for the bank guarantee.
On the night.
I know, but you did. You did.
Gerry, go ahead.
You have renewed the bank guarantee twice. Now let me come back to what we would do. First of all, I do commend the new Greek Prime Minister and the new administration that has been brought in there. I only wish that the new Prime Minister was our Taoiseach at this time, standing up for our interest the way he's standing up for the interests of people in Greece. And in all of the social and economic policy, you have become, Taoiseach, more Fine Gael than Fine Gael themselves. I put it to you. I put it to you around this banking debt conference, and you have said on the record that this is an idea with some merit.
Jerry,
I put it to the Taoiseach. I put it to the Taoiseach, and the Taoiseach said no. Now you're the Taoiseach.
All right.
You're the Taoiseach. Do you not have any? Do you not have any influence in this?
Sorry. Jerry Adams, I'd like to ask you a question based on your idea around the debt conference. What message does that send out if we take part in a pan-European debt conference with the likes of Greece and Spain? Are we saying, we can't pay, we're in trouble, look at us again, we belong to the bad boys of Europe? What message are we sending out?
What we would say is what is now policy. What we have advocated for a very long time, that the banking debt is not the people of Ireland's debt. That the European Union deal with that, like the banking sector deal with that. This is the government that told us that we were going to get retrospective recapitalisation of their banks, of our banks. We haven't even asked for it. The Taoiseach, the Taoiseach haven't even asked for that. So what Sinn Féin would do, we would negotiate to relieve the people of the burden of this debt, which, by the way, your great-grandchildren are going to be paying for. This is going to be paid for generations, to come.
Joan Burton,
we need to stand up.
Thank you, Gerry.
Sorry, Joan. First of all, just going back to Greece. Greece is in a very, very difficult situation. Greece can't borrow money. Greece basically can't fund its own economy. And for instance, something like 25% of people are unemployed there, 50% of young people. There's a humanitarian crisis in Greece.
We know it's different to Ireland.
But what have we done in relation to the banks? We have exited an incredibly difficult situation that we inherited and that his party actually voted for on the night of the guarantee. Well, the records of the Dáil show that you did.
No, we didn't.
And can I just say this? We can now borrow at rates just above Germany, and that's the key thing for growing our economy. So when we said we're putting an investment of 2.2 billion into building houses, we're going to be able to do that through borrowing funding.
I think now is a good time to bring you the results of our poll in conjunction with Amoric Research, because we asked our panel of over 1,000 people, should Ireland support the new Greek government's efforts to seek debt forgiveness from Europe? Here's the results. Yes, 48%. No, 30%. Don't know, 22%. Quick reaction, Joan, to that? I mean, 48% of people saying that we should support Greece.
Absolutely, all over Europe want to see the Greek people having a recovery. There's such a dreadful humanitarian situation there. And by the way, the quantitative easing, the QE as it's called, that will help Ireland, for instance, to make our costs even lower. I hope that countries like Greece will be in a position to benefit from that as well.
Last word, Gerry Adams.
Let's talk about Ireland and let's talk about this state. The big problem we have is the debt. That's the big problem. This is a European problem. Of course, we should be working with the people of Greece and working with others to make sure that a new European Union comes out of all of this. And where you start, Taoiseach, is in the morning. You ring up whoever you ring up at the head of the European Commission and you say, I'm the Taoiseach. I made promises during the election. I said that I would reduce the debt. I now want to be part of a debt conference and I want to negotiate on behalf of the people who elected me, on behalf of my government.
All right, thank you very much. Taoiseach, thank you. And Gerry Adams. Well, now, coming up after the break, a family just weeks away from having their home repossessed will tell us their story. We'll have the result of our second Amoric Research poll question, which is, would you support state-funded debt forgiveness for distressed mortgages over directing government money elsewhere? Plus, we'll have tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Do stay with us. Hi there, you're very welcome to Byrne Live. Now, this week the Taoiseach is meeting the head of the Personal Insolvency Agency amid political fears of mass home repossessions in the run-up to the next election. Well, in the last 5 years, more than 3,000 homes have been repossessed, both voluntarily and as a result of court orders. Well, as house prices go up, more people find themselves outside of the parameters for schemes such as mortgage to rent, which are designed to keep people in their homes. And one such couple is Billy Peary and Niamh McCarthy, who are with us here tonight. You're both very welcome. We know you're nervous. This isn't an easy thing to do. You're in a tough situation, Billy. Maybe you might tell us where you're at right now with your house.
Well, we have a repossession order. We have our second. It got put back in 2013 or 2014, and in the 23rd of February is our next court date.
And it is really going to happen then?
Yeah, as far as we know, like I don't see any other way it could go really, like, because we tried to get mortgage to rent, but because our house price went over the cap.
Yeah, we'll come back to that in a moment, but I suppose it'd be good for people to know what happened. I mean, you had a job.
I was a painter and decorator for 10 years, and in 2008, obviously the property crash and everyone lost their job, so I lost my job then.
And you bought the house then the year before, so everything was grand when you bought the house?
Everything was fine, yeah. We had a £45,000 deposit for the house. The house was pretty modest for the area, like we did well on the price and all, so it was fine. Like it was
20,000 cheaper than one like next door to it.
Right, so you thought you were getting a good deal and everything would be fine.
Yeah.
And then, Billy, you lost your job.
I lost my job, and yeah, it became very apparent over the next few months that like there wasn't going to be any more building on the scale it was. So I went back to Foss and did a course as a signwriter and did a 9 months in Foss and then a 9-month work placement with a company in Selbridge.
And you had another baby in the midst of all this?
Well, no, our daughter was born when we got the house. Just as we got the house, our daughter was born. Like that was the plan. So she was a year old by the time I lost my job. Like so, we were that year we were paying the mortgage. Like so.
But since then, since the job went and you got into financial difficulty, you were coming up with different arrangements with the bank and paying interest only and different things like that, just to keep.
Yeah, we were constantly in contact with the bank.
Okay.
Yeah, writing letters and telling them our situation.
So then you were told that you were suitable for mortgage to rent. Explain to us how that works.
Well, you have to be earning less, as a couple earning less than 35,000, and your house price has to be under 220,000, and I think there's something else.
And then the house is bought and you rent the house back.
Yeah, house.
So you get to stay in your home.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what it's for.
So you must have been thrilled, thinking, right, we've been in trouble for a couple of years now, but there is light at the end of the tunnel. We can stay here.
Exactly. Yeah, that's how we felt like. Yeah.
And then.
Then it was we were put forward for a mortgage to rent, and then like 7 months later, the house price went up during the summer, and then we were told, no, you can't have it anymore. It's not you can't do it like.
Okay.
So then we were put back into the legal process.
And this is when you started to hear again about repossession.
That was in October, yeah.
So I understand just before Christmas then you had a letter.
Yeah, it's basically a letter saying that we're back in the legal queue and our the court date is for the 23rd of next month. And
what are you going to do?
So there's nothing before when we were kind of advised to go bankrupt, and this was the year before, and we thought we basically going to lose the house anyway. This was before we met David and his team, and they tried to get us back onto mortgage to rent or get us put forward.
But if you lose your home,
we're in Focus Ireland. You're just
go to Focus.
We're in talking to them, and you basically have to go on the day they kick you out of your house, and you're kind of that's it.
You've been told in order to get help from any of the emergency services, you'd need to be homeless on that day.
Yeah.
And what about your children? I mean, have you talked them through it? And
well, our son is 16, and we had to actually explain everything that's going on. So.
It'd be really tough on them. Because next year he's doing his leaving cert, and how's that going to affect him?
How has it affected the two of you?
Oh, it's very stressful. Yeah.
Do you feel worn out from it? Because I mean, it's something that's been going on for so long, and you hear about the hope that you had with the mortgage to rent, and then back to repossession again.
Because it went from we were going to lose the house, and then there was a hope that we could get onto mortgage to rent, and then by the time that takes to go through, then the house price went up again, and which over the cap, and then you're out of that process, and that was the last.
And you're here tonight, and I said, it's hard for you to be here. I know, Niamh, you're really nervous about speaking tonight. So why have you decided to do it? I mean, what are you hoping to achieve tonight by coming here?
Maybe get if anyone else is in this situation, the same as us, and they haven't got help, just to get help. Get in contact with David and the Irish Mortgage Holders Organisation. Just to get help, don't go through it on your own. Because David and the team have been a really great help to us.
Okay, David, I'm going to come to you on that. David Hall is here from the Irish Mortgage Holders Organisation. You're very welcome. How common is that story?
I think, when you're listening to Billy and Niamh's story is very typical. There's 37,500 people in mortgage arrears of over 2 years. And it is, Billy and Niamh are classic people who borrowed enough money to buy a family home for their family, did all the right things, paid a 20% deposit, which is quite strange given the current debate that's going on with the central bank. And we have a shambles of a mortgage to rent system of which, you know, the only thing I agree with the banks on is that mortgage rent is a shambles. And we have a system that pumps 64 billion euros into banks. And we have taxpayers and families riddled with stress trying to resolve their circumstances. So this is very typical. The people.
Can I just say to you, the mortgage to rent scheme was designed when house prices were at rock bottom. Now, if they were to change the bands and say, look, you can avail of the mortgage to rent scheme even if your house is worth a bit more, would that help? I mean,
Absolutely.
that would seem like a fairly simple thing to do.
Yeah, well, and again, this is not a statutory system. This is purely a policy from the Department of Environment. And we met Minister Kelly before Christmas, and he's most certainly focused on this. The bands are 220,000 within Dublin. Find me a house. And we've had media porn for the last 12 months in respect of media property prices. Have a look at those property prices and find me a house that's 220,000. Their house is valued at 260,000. They owe 315,000, and they pumped 45,000 euros of their own savings into the house. They don't have a third-party property in Spain. There's no, you know, a perceived moral hazard here. They've got 4,000 of other euros of debt. They are eminently suitable for mortgage rent and meet all of the criteria for mortgage rent, yet they're outside the band by 40,000 euros.
OK. We have in our audience Gregory Connor. You're very welcome to the programme. And we should say you're from the Department of Economics at Maynooth. Do you think the banks should be doing more repossession?
The repossession rate looked broadly is low in Ireland, not extraordinarily low. Roughly, there's about 900,000 mortgages in Ireland, about 1,200 per year getting repossessed, which is about 1/1600ths of 1%. So it's not all that high. It's low, if anything. What's extraordinary is the number of people in mortgage default, as David Hall has already mentioned. There's just an enormous proportion. 1 in 8 mortgages is in default. So there's this enormous stock of defaulted mortgages. They have to be resolved in some way. That's what's shocking.
And are you saying the best way for these situations to be resolved is if the banks repossess the houses and sell them on?
I think that's the worst way, but something has to resolve that problem.
Well, talk to me about the mortgage to rent scheme. I mean, do you think it would be a good idea to increase those bands so that houses that are worth more now, that those people would be considered for mortgage to rent?
Well, a lot of things have to be done. Obviously, people have to start paying their mortgages. That would really help.
Would it cost the state more if the mortgage to rent scheme was expanded, if those bands were widened?
Of course it would. I think, you know, more mortgages, more mortgage to rent, more people getting out of mortgage arrears. I mean, you have to keep in mind, if you look at the numbers, again, just from a numerical perspective, the shocking, really catastrophic figure in Ireland is the proportion of mortgages in default. 1 in 8 mortgages in Ireland is in default, which is just like 10 or 15 times what you'd expect. So it's an enormously high proportion of mortgages in default.
I want to bring you our poll, the results of our second question that we asked in our poll this week, and the question was, would you support state-funded debt forgiveness for distressed mortgages over directing government money elsewhere? And the results are split down the middle. 37% yes, 37% no, and 26% don't know. David, a quick word on that. There's a moral hazard issue in there where some people think we shouldn't help those who are in trouble because they got in trouble themselves.
Yeah, and I think, you know, there is a moral hazard. The moral hazard is Niamh and Billy, who are facing homelessness, having 64 billion being pumped in, and Gregory very well and eloquently states the banking policy. Banks have sat in the rear end for 5 years. They have hoped this day would come where property prices would increase and they would reduce their loss and throw people out in the streets. There are 25,000 people now facing repossession, undoubtedly, and this will be a very rough political year, and the Taoiseach is meeting some insolvency people on Wednesday, and let's hope we wake up on Thursday morning.
All right, David, thank you very much. And Billy and Niamh, thank you for being with us tonight, and we do wish you both well. A very quick look now at tomorrow's newspaper front pages. The Irish Times leads with reaction to the Greek election, saying that Greece's creditors extend a wary welcome to the news that the far-left Syriza party has struck a coalition deal to enter government. Moving on then to the front page of the Irish Independent, which says Dáil must sanction the sale of Aer Lingus. And Aer Lingus also on the front page, I think, of the... No, that's the Star I'm seeing there. Elaine told me she lost a baby. I'm just reading that. It's quite hard for me to see it. And moving on then to the Examiner. The Examiner front page, Greece debt talks offer slim hopes for Ireland. It also reports that a new passport card for EU travel will be available in July. They're the front pages. Thanks to all of our panel guests tonight and also to the audience here for coming along. And if you want to join us here in the studio on any Monday night, you can email clairebyrnelive@rte.ie or telephone us. The number's there on your screen, Dublin 208-3494. I'll be back on the radio Saturday at 1 o'clock, RTE Radio 1, and I hope to see you back here next Monday night at 10:35. For now, though, a very good night to you.
We went for the aunties and uncles.